Hey there, this is Jen T. Grace, founder of Publish Your Purpose, and I am sitting here with Dr. Steve Yacovelli for your book launch. How are you today?
Yay! Hello, Genty Grace. It's very, very, very good to see you as always.
Oh, I am excited. I'm always excited. That is the word that I use for all of them. I'm just always excited. But I am excited about this book in particular because it is called Your Queer Career. And it's workplace advice from the gay leadership dude. So there's so many directions I want to kind of go in and ask questions about, but I would love to just kind of like start with you, like sharing a little bit more about who you are, who the gay leadership dude is, and then maybe the origin of this book in particular.
Happy to do that. So hello, everyone. Again, my name is Dr. Steve Yacovelli, pronounced he, him, and his, and I am the owner and principal of Top Dog Learning Group, and I'm also known as the Gay Leadership Dude. So if you're watching or streaming this right now, you know three things about me immediately: that I am gay, that I self-identify as a dude, and I really like to talk about leadership. And that's really where the big focus on the latest books that I've done are centered around leadership, especially through the rainbow lens, as I like to say. And been in the leadership space for almost 30 years. So I started when I was in diapers. Not really, obviously, but really been playing in the leadership space, both as an internal consultant to folks like the Walt Disney Company, to IBM. I was a professor for like a hot minute. And then I started Top Dog as my full-time gig in 2008 and have been playing around with leaders ever since.
Wow. All right. I'm impressed with the brevity, the succinctness here.
Love
it. Yeah, I like it. So looking at this new book, so it's Your Queer Career.
Yes.
What prompted or inspired you to kind of take, because obviously your everything you do is around kind of leadership and workplace related. So like why career focus? Like what was the inspiration?
Well, actually, I'm going to blame you, Jen. To be completely honest. So for those, Jen and I go back to 2018. We actually met in Philadelphia. So there's a city of brotherly love, my sort of hometown. But we were at the NGLCC conference that particular year, my very first one. I'd just gotten certified with the National Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce, if you're not familiar with NGLCC. And there's the amazing Jen T. Grace is in my slideshow. But Jen and I were sitting outside of a conference session and we're both sorting our business cards. And, she said, "What do you do?" And I'm a consulting, blah, 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 Top Dog. And I said, "What do you do?" And Jen said, "Well, I'm, a publisher. I publish Your Purpose, blah, blah." And I said, "I have a leadership book in my head." And you said, "Let's get that book out." And I remember that so clearly to say, because it totally launched me into being a commercial author, I would say. Prior to meeting Jen, I had published a few things. One being my dissertation, which is just like ridiculous because I will once in a blue moon get a royalty check for the Regan Computer Attitude, Aptitude, and Behavior Survey. Random things, my doctoral research. And then I tried my very first hand at self-publishing. Now I know, obviously it's a little sensitive subject talking with my publisher right now. I had a horrible experience with that. I know some people do have success. I did not. And that was for the Overcoming Poopy E-Learning, which was, kind of still focused on my doctoral research, but through a much more cheeky lens. And so then that leadership book came out, if you will. And that's the one that Jen and I worked on first. And that was called Pride Leadership. And so the idea behind Pride Leadership was really thinking through what is it that makes a difference for queer and ally leaders in the workplace. And so Pride Leadership focuses on the 6 competencies that, quite frankly, I've seen anyone either excel at if they're using them or completely crashing and burning if they are not. And those are authenticity, courage, empathy, communication, relationships, and culture. And so that's kind of the basis on Pride Leadership. I like to think of it as being kind of more about the theory part. Did win a couple of book awards, so we were very excited about that. And just had a really great time with it. Did lots of book signings over the years, was able to put them in some stores locally, met lots of gay and queer awesome folks that I got to give the book to, some amazing drag performers as well. Brian Sims, who wrote the foreword to the book as well. Secretary Buttigieg got a copy, and some really, really fun, cool stuff to get it out there, and had some good success, lots of podcasts and stuff with friends and not, including yours, Jen. And so it really was a lot of good stuff. But as things evolved. And as I went and did the audiobook, which Jen, I know you know this story, but of course the audiobook was literally read in the closet because that was the quietest place that I could do that in 2020. So that is literally me. You see all the clothes around me in what I found out was my unair conditioned closet here in Central Florida in April. So that was kind of fun, but really thought about Pride Leadership and trying to get it out there. And it turned into an online leadership training program called Pride Leadership, the Lions program, where Lions stands for a leader's immersive opportunity to nurture strengths. And so I wrote the book because I knew it would be a textbook at some point. And that's what it did. It became a textbook, and we use it in this program. And to make this story not as long as it should be, but that's really where the concept or the ideas of Your Queer Career came about. So we would go through and do the 8-module online program. We had queer leaders from around the world going through it, hundreds by this point since we launched it in 2020. And we would still focus on the 6 competencies, but I would have folks say, Steve, I have a question. And they go into a conversation about, applying some of the concepts from Pride Leadership into their respective workplace. And it could have been something like, hey, Steve, I think my boss is homophobic. What do I do? And so I would answer the questions usually in one-on-one coaching sessions and such. And I thought, I'm going to start writing these down. And so I did start writing them down. I published them in a few places like Advocate, BEQ Pride Magazine had several of them. I'm a contributing author or columnist to the Central Florida LGBTQ paper called Watermark. And so I was publishing these answers here and there under a column. And I said, you know what, this needs to be a book. And that's really, in its nutshell, how Your Career came about. It's still looking at the same 6 competencies, but we've organized the responses to several questions through those 6 lenses, if you will, and organized it so people can kind of say, oh, let me look at the questions on courage and see if there's something that relates to my situation or something I can learn from as well.
Mm. And did the questions that you included in the book, did the majority of them come out of those experiences and students that you had?
Yeah, they're all truly from real people. Either people who I'd have in the Lions program, some people who would just ask questions, randomly, like friends or colleagues would be interacting, but they are all real humans. Ask them. Of course, I did change their names to protect the innocent, but yeah, they're all authentic questions, and some. It's funny because as I collected them over time, I did have to go back and adjust some of the answers because some were answered pre-COVID and things are a little different now. And but yeah, they are all like from real humans during the Lions program and such.
I love that. And so what is your hope, right? Because Pride Leadership was birthed a number of years ago in all of her glory. And I have designated her a her. I don't know how you have defined
I think I followed your lead on that one because she's my big girl.
She is a big girl. That is a true story. And so and for those who are watching and they're able to see, there's such a beautiful synergy and harmony between the books. Yes, they look just so beautiful together. So is it? Oh, they have holding hands. Oh my God, I love it. Of course, you have a graphic with the holding hands.
I do.
Why wouldn't you? Oh, that was such an unexpected joy. Someone who, yeah, that's perfect. So someone who, I guess my question is, someone reads Your Queer Career.
Mm-hmm.
Is it an organic leap for them to read Pride Leadership, or vice versa? What's the relationship?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, in my head, I would say, well, Pride Leadership is the theory and the tools. Your Queer Career is the application of those tools. And so, but I think it's chicken or egg, really. You can go into Your Queer Career first. It's a quicker read, of course, and start to see how, situations and how they could apply, and then go dive deeper into the specific tools and strategies that you as a queer and ally leader could use. Vice versa, if you start with Pride Leadership, you start to amass some of those tools and ideas and understanding. And then when you get into Your Queer Career, you can start to see the nuances on how they're applied. Now, the funny thing, as is with all of the stuff that we talk about, because authenticity, courage, empathy, communication, relationships, culture are not silos. I can't shape my culture if I'm not building relationships. I can't be authentic if I'm not being courageous. And so it was kind of hard to take the questions and feed them into one of the 6 spots, because pretty much every single time they could go in a couple of different spots. And so I think that if I have to pick, I'd say go to Pride Leadership first, because then you'll get a broader sense on how these competencies work together. And then when you dive into the questions in your career, you can really start to pick and choose and say, oh, Steve put that under courage. You know what? I probably would have thought about that as communication or something to that effect.
I love that. Yeah. I think that's great. And so when someone's thinking, like, so say someone is watching this conversation, they themselves identify as queer and we're using queer as an umbrella term of which everyone else is included under. Is there a age? Is there a type of job? Is there what for someone who might be young in their career and just doesn't know what's going on, someone who's more seasoned, how does this kind of apply to a wide range of people?
It's yeah. And I thank you for asking that, Jen, because I've had a couple people ask me, they're like, well, I'm kind of toward the end of my career. Can I still get value of this? Yeah, I think so. Because these are situations that are pretty universal to folks within the rainbow family. And I think, had I had this book earlier in my career, it might have helped guide me on how to approach situations like, when I first started, when I was internal to companies and I was helping run employee resource groups, one of the questions I have in here is, do employee resource groups really work? And boy, I would have loved to have some of the comments that wise old Steve put in there now, back when I was trying to figure it out as an ERG leader. So, I think there could be nuances. I think people who are in various stages of their career will see different things in the responses as well as in the questions that are within your career. I didn't answer your question.
But you did. And as you're talking, I'm having a full circle moment, because literally 20 years ago in July, I was working for a company out of college, even though I had been in retail management prior to that. So it's not like this was my first job. I knew I had many jobs prior to this moment. And it was such a openly hostile environment toward me as a queer person. And I'm thinking, could I have imagined myself 20 years ago, 20 years later, helping someone write the book that I desperately needed at that time to just survive every day?
Yeah.
And it's just really cool to think about wow, how great would it be to be able to reach someone who might be struggling in their work environment for any number of reasons, and for this book to just give them some kind of guidance or hope, even that there are places where you fit.
Well, and I love that you brought that up, Jen, because when I think about how Pride Leadership came about, and it basically, it was me observing leaders, queer and otherwise. Like I said, I've been doing this for a while. You both as an internal consultant and external, you really start to see a pattern of behavior. And I think that's where the academic nerd kind of pops in, that qualitative analysis, watching people, kind of observing. And that's really where the 6 competencies came in. But you notice there's a difference in what you're seeing before versus now, because here's the 6, but they were just through the quote unquote normal lens. But then I started thinking about the queer leaders within the greater Orlando area. It's kind of started there. And this is actually the symbol after the Pulse Massacre. Our lesbian city commissioner had these commissioned and would give those out to certain people. So it's very near and dear. That kind of symbolizes, queer Orlando, if you will. But I was starting to write Pride Leadership, or what was going to be Pride Leadership. It wasn't called that then. And I started observing our queer brothers and sisters and siblings in the Central Florida area and beyond, who are really stepping up to lead for equality and justice within our respective community. And then, and I know you've heard this story before, Jen, but I started thinking about Carrie Bradshaw and Sex in the City. And it's so cheeky, but she always said, I couldn't help but wonder. And that's kind of what popped into my head was I couldn't help but wonder, is there something about the queer experience that really lends itself to look at these 6 leadership competencies just in a little bit different perspective? And so I kind of putting it through the rainbow lens, and that's really where Pride Leadership came about. And I often think, boy, I would have loved to have this book when I was starting my career as well, just to think through, yes, providing effective feedback is awesome, regardless of who you are, but putting that through the rainbow lens just speaks a little bit differently to my experience as a queer professional. And that's where I think there's a lot of value. And I think that's, to your point, what I'm really excited about with your queer career is kind of, it takes it to that next level on applying some of those things to maybe situations I'm truly living as a member of our community in the workplace.
Yeah, I think that's, there's so much conversation around diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, whatever new word we're going to throw into the conversation. But I think at the end of the day, there's obviously this need to belong. There's this need to feel included, but there is the difference of our lived experiences that it's important to have those different lenses that we're able to see through and have access to. So I think it's really powerful because, there's probably, because it really is a lens, because I would imagine that the majority of the information that people are saying about career related stuff, might be able to swap out someone's identity and put in a different identity, but it's going to be the examples and it's going to be how that story resonates and lands to be like, wow, I also had this really terrible experience because of my queer identity. And I think that that's why this isn't just your, it is the rainbow lens. It's not just your everyday type of career advice.
Yeah. And to your point about, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and belonging, I love that the broader workplace is really starting to, or at least smart businesses are really starting to think about that whole concept of belonging, because, and when I first started playing around in the DEI space is actually when I was at the Walt Disney Company at Disney Cruise Line, and a mentor said, and she does not attribute this to herself. She stole it from somebody else or repurposed it. As we said at Disney, we never stole things. But she said, if you think about it, diversity is being invited to the dance and inclusion is being asked to dance, to kind of be that active member. But if I take it a step further and say belonging is me, the person at the dance, dancing however the heck I want, and no one judges me or makes fun of me, kind of like Elaine on Seinfeld, if you're of a certain age, you remember that. And I think that's super important. And smart businesses are saying, you know what, belonging is about the employee, the team member. It's less about us as a business and what we're doing to have diversity and include everybody. And I think that's the right strategy to go, because it's about the individual. Because what I can see as feeling like a belonging may be different than someone who's 3 cubicles away or 3 Zooms away or whatever that looks like.
And I wish that that's the conversation that people who are kind of on the anti side of this being a positive thing could see, because it's not necessarily driven by identity. Although, unfortunately, we are just grouped into buckets because our brains are wired to group people into buckets. But it really is about helping people just feel seen and be able to show up at work however they want to show up, regardless of what their lived experiences are, what their background is, what demographic boxes that can be checked.
I have a lot of folks ask for our business, do you have any training classes on how a straight manager can deal with queer people? I'm like, no. And yes, I know there's some great programs out there. I said, that's not what I do. We teach about basically being a good ally, period. And so the strategies for me to be a good ally to our trans siblings, they can be the same ones as me being a good ally to our Black brothers and sisters and siblings. And so, if we're doing it right, we're creating that consciously inclusive workplace, and me as a consciously inclusive leader, and that should transcend, like how you said, demographic tick boxes that people put us in.
Yeah. I find I'm happy that the conversation has migrated to more of the belonging side. I feel like it was a slow evolution for us to get here, but it's like, all right, now belonging is kind of like the thing that are being the thing people are talking about. And, I hope that because of that, more people will feel like they belong in their particular workplace, because we spend so much time at work. And to be miserable and to have to hide your identity in whatever aspect of that is just a miserable experience. I know from firsthand experience.
I was gonna say, I think what you're also seeing now in this, quote unquote post-COVID world or whatever it looks like is for a lot of folks, not everybody, but a lot of folks now have this opportunity of hybrid or distance working. And
Mhm.
so smart businesses are realizing, first of all, that genie really can't go back in the bottle. People who've gotten a taste of that,
Yep.
and you're seeing all this pushback with folks who are like, no, we have this great office. You're coming in 5 days a week, and people are like, screw that, and they're taking
Mhm.
their toys and going elsewhere. And I think that's the thing that your career, for example, can help create that sense of belonging for someone. If say my employer is like, oh, here's a great book you might enjoy, or my boss gives me that, like, wow, that's really cool. So you're
Mhm.
creating that sense of belonging by just acknowledging that, yeah, if you're a queer employee, you might be looking at things just a little bit differently
Mhm.
than another demographic within our workplace. And if we're not doing that as overall businesses, our top talent's going to say, you know what, bye, and take their toys and go elsewhere. And I think we need to be really mindful of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like the talent, it's so interesting to see that there's like a shortage of talent and then there's a surplus of talent.
Yeah.
Because everyone's complaining. And I'm like, and most of the people I know and I'm friends with own businesses.
Yeah.
And I don't know a single person currently that is not looking to hire someone. Like, I mean, it's literally everybody. And yet there's people complaining that there's no jobs.
Yeah.
But it's to kind of the point is that there's like a ability to select what makes sense for you. And if that corporate stodgy 9 to 5 have to be in that brick building with no windows doesn't work for you, they will take their toys and go somewhere else because
Yeah.
there's no incentive otherwise, because there's so many other flexible options that exist. So
Yeah.
I think it's like it's an empowerment. And at the same time, I feel like us as business owners are also kind of like trying to figure out how to navigate that from a
Yeah, and
different way.
that's actually one of the questions that was in your career is one of the folks asked, hey, I'm a distance employee and I'm not feeling that virtual love anymore
Mhm.
because now that some people are in the office, I'm feeling disenfranchised or feeling that their attention is focused on the person who's physically sitting down the hallway.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's a thing us humans have. It's called proximity bias. And so there's
Mhm.
strategies listed as one of the answers that how do you try to combat that
Mhm.
if you are that remote or distance or hybrid employee?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just so comprehensive and so kind of wide ranging. So I'm curious, as we're kind of wrapping up here, what is your hope for this? So say someone, reaches out to you in a month, a year, whenever, and they're like, "Oh, Steve, this really did insert the blank here."
I think two things pop in my head. First is that somebody out there reading your career finds themselves in a very, very similar situation as one of the 24 questions that is answered in the book. And they maybe apply some of the strategies I recommend and it works.
Mhm.
That's my big hope. I've seen that in some of the other classes based upon pride leadership, where folks said, hey, Steve, there was a tool in there or some, matter of fact, I literally had someone yesterday in the Lions program say, oh my gosh, you had this XYZ tool. I used it on my boss and it worked. Yes.
Mhm.
And I'm hoping something similar like that happens in your career. And then the other thing that I hope is that people start to ask more questions, whether it
Mhm.
be to me or to other queer professionals, and start to listen to that perspective and gain that difference of opinion or diversity of thought, because there's so much knowledge within our rainbow family that I don't think is tapped into as much as it should be, especially for
Mhm.
folks who are newer in their career journey, and really leveraging the experience and expertise of those of us who are a bit more experienced. We'll just phrase it that way.
Mhm.
And what we've learned either doing it the right way or learn by crashing and burning and failing, but still picking ourselves up, being resilient as we are as a collective community, and kind of moved on down the road. So I think it's going to be 1 and 2. I absolutely can see your career being version 1.0 or
Mhm.
volume 1, I should say, and really kind of keeping the conversation going with all other questions that I keep getting all the time.
Hmm. Yeah, the placement I see for this is thinking about somebody who is new to a job, regardless of what the job is. Maybe they're tied into their Pride ERG group, and the option for some leader to say, "Oh, you're new here and you're part of the Pride ERG. This book is for you." And just to have this kind of ingrained, instead of giving people who moved my cheese from 1980, whatever, we can, you know what I mean? Like we can be a little more modern and much more applicable, because the more healthy, happy, and more healthy and happy and whole someone feels at work, the more productive they're going to be. So it's like a win-win-win all around for everybody.
There's a really great study that the Society of Human Resource Management did, and I'm going to get the numbers slightly wrong. I've used it in presentations. You think I would know it, but the dollar amount that it takes to fill a job, it's usually like 3 to 6 months salary of that role, by when you factor in recruiting costs, advertising, interviewing, getting that person trained, getting them up to speed for them to go at the production of the job that was vacated. It's like 3 to 6 months salary. So if we can keep folks happy in their current work environment and see how we can grow them there, just as a business alone, we're going to save money. And so, I'm all about making the world a better place. Of course I am. I know you are. I mean, my goodness, that's kind of the value statement for Publisher Purpose, for Top Dog Learning Group, and the Gay Leadership Dude. However, we are both business people, and folks out there are business people. And when you look at why organizations go down the path of creating inclusive workplaces, yes, it makes the world a better place. Sometimes legally we have to in certain situations, but at the end of the day, it's the right thing to do for business. And so even if we can just agree upon that, the world's going to be so much better because we'll be much more inclusive.
There's so many studies that show that
Gosh,
it's good for the ROI, because you have to speak to the ROI when we're working in workplace settings, right? Because otherwise no one's going to make a decision unless they're like, I can make money doing this.
Yay. Yeah.
Even if it is the right thing. Yeah.
But it makes the world better too. Yay.
Like it really is a win-win-win. It's just a matter of getting more people on board with this. So I love this. I love the hand-holding of these books. This is bringing me so much joy, and I'm going to have to make sure that even more people see this conversation. But I'm so grateful for our just ongoing partnership, and honestly, the work that you do in the world, because I feel like it just keeps kind of like rolling and rolling and rolling, and the impact is just kind of pouring out in all directions. So I'm just so grateful that we are partnered here together.
Thank you, Jen. And thank you for your leadership. I just, like I said, that faithful day in Philadelphia in 2018 literally changed my business, and hopefully, inspired folks to change the world just a little bit more inclusively as well.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. Love this. Thank you so much. So for anyone who is interested in checking out these books, I encourage you to go to yourqueercareer.com. That'll, there'll be ways to see Pride Leadership there too. Obviously, the book is wherever you would like to purchase a book, but Steve is incredibly creative and has all kinds of bonuses and goodies and things wrapped in when you buy the book directly from him. So that is the only location I'm going to suggest to getting the book. So
yeah. And matter of fact, because you won't see this on Amazon, we just launched the like a bundle. So if you're like, "Ooh, I'm really interested in both of these," go to yourqueercareer.com and you'll see the page, all different options for you. Some will send you to Amazon if it's a little easier. Some will keep it on our house. But then there's also ways to get the two little book babies that I have in your household, and they look just lovely on the shelf as Jen and I were talking. I mean, they just look so cool. Look how cool they look.
They really do. It just like warms my heart that they're just like so perfect together, which obviously was intentional.
Correct.
If that's not clear to those watching, like very intentional. I love it. I love it. This is so good. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. For those watching, I will be back at some other point in the future with talking to somebody else with their launch. But today, go check out yourqueercareer.com.
Thank you.
Thanks.